This is a presentation about the circumstances that I am in Tacoma and how I got here. In, in the direction of explaining why I feel strongly that Gallaudet University for the Deaf should not have ignored what was being done to me. The city of Pittsburgh, of course, has the Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf. Now, I appealed to Gallaudet and the Western Pennsylvania um, School for the Deaf, but the School for the Deaf in Western Pennsylvania is led by people who have familiarity with the scrambling for resources that goes on, as well as the corruption and dishonesty in Pittsburgh. And so they tone down anything that isn't bureaucratic nicety and asking them to take note of a situation that involved the terrible crimes was going a little bit overboard with expectation from them. You would think that Gallaudet, being in D.C. and being an old institution founded by Abraham Lincoln, could do better. Take note of the fact that the Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf is located on the very nearby. Anybody going back and forth from Pittsburgh to Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf almost certainly crosses the Fern Hollow Bridge, which just collapsed and made national news. So you see, there's a certain amount of realism to their unwillingness to discharge unusual calls for responsibility because they know that they will get nowhere with the city of Pittsburgh, who allowed the bridge even to collapse and showed no remorse when the people who chased me out of town, I mean, they're still cackling on and on about gossip this and being destructive that from the deaf community, despite the fact that one of the people I most loudly warned them about was John Schulman, who was caught in an $8 million museum heist. He was a partner of Leslie Katz. And the ringleaders in Seattle continue to bang on and on and on in the name of Leslie Katz, despite the catastrophic crimes that I have reported about her gang. Now, I don't think Gallaudet should have ignored this. I'll give you an example of the problem. One of these people is an attorney who was the number two attorney at the University of Pittsburgh, Miles Kirshner, under Chancellor Nordenberg when he was the dean of the law school and was forming youthful minds to violate any concept of ethical standard that my father, as senior faculty, had worked so hard to make part of the University of Pittsburgh's mainstream ethical considerations. He just make money, just win, 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 win. Well, Kirshner used to say, "You're not deaf, you're ignoring me." That's the standard of law in the city of Pittsburgh. Gallaudet and Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf should have been alert to this. Talking about a person with 98% deafness who was denied sign language education, who was streamlined in the shadows of high school after emerging from a truly horrible torture chamber with neurological injuries, and they said that they were testing him. Even today, the clubhouse used the term test for on behalf of this lobby. They had me paint, they suggested I should paint Starry Night, which Leslie Katz, the partner of Schulman, did once. So they're announcing their agency as underhandedness, as usual. They wouldn't let me go to school. For 12 years, I was just staring into space. They said I was a failure. I was a troublemaker. When I finally got away and went back to school, I made honors, graduated, Phi Theta Kappa. I mean, so obviously the criminal, and then nobody apologized to me when the person who they based everything on was arrested in an $8 million museum heist. They wouldn't even consider the fact that he was a partner of Leslie Katz. His partner in crime was from the same school as Leslie Katz, Ellis. He was administrative there. and they were stealing it. Well, Peter Gabriel is behind some of this because he worked with Schulman and Leslie Katz on this group project of, you know, toughening up the battered. Well, see, Paul McCartney chews the carpets, Persian carpets, right raw. He just tears them into pieces because he's demanding an infinitesimal delinquency allegation against the little child who was tortured, so that Yoko Ono can collect on a lifelong project of big money, big money. You know, what the queers and so call millions, while they're helping their own assassins. Okay, now they discreetly connect the dots of John Lennon's murder, which is presumed to have taken place. I don't believe it. I think it was a trick from Hollywood and Pentagon Disney for very good reasons. I think that, which I can go into sometime. But assuming you buy the storyline, to negligence and AIDS, and this explains the story that Gallaudet refused to investigate, which is that they had a ward game of AIDS testing on Mount Desert Island, which I proved premeditated. Now, Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf couldn't even get the safety of the Fernholder Bridge established, much less are they going to be able to verify my testimony about this. And they don't have a lot of time to look into it, and they don't want to know. But Gallaudet should have been more careful about that. One of the things you see about the handicapped people during COVID, now they poisoned me in the mouth before COVID. There's sort of a bridge, a Fernholder bridge to COVID, between the AIDS attack and the COVID-19 attack. Now, I know we're dealing with the criminally insane Putin and so forth, and we're playing a game of tone down the hopes that they don't explode, because they're criminally insane. But we've allowed them without any kind of sanction to go without any kind of dialogue or investigation, and they still sit on high. That's why I think the clubhouse should be sanctioned unless they divest from the laws of Procter and Katz. I mean, Andrea Swimmer, somebody really has to say it, was a person who was of loose morals, who was pushing herself on me so she could pull this maneuver for David Braunstein and his friends and his gang, Miles Kirshner and so forth. Now, when somebody says you're not deaf, you're ignoring you, and it plays to the audience of Pittsburgh psychotic fabulations about Pitt being after the big money and win, and ha ha ha, and they drown it out in laughter. They kicked your butt, it violates the disability code of protecting people who cannot hear from group mockeries, lying about the fact they cannot hear. I wasn't ignoring anybody. I was deaf. You see the difference. And Gallaudet, even the Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf, should have been alert to the fact that Kirshner was up to something when he was pulling those kinds of devices. But they ignored it. He made number two. Nobody ever sanctioned him. He was a shoplifter. He was pushing hard drugs on people. Nobody ever sanctioned him. He was, because Nordenberg said, amen, amen. The nature of reality is the Fernholder Bridge. And when it collapses, it's pies in your face, Squirrel. The joke's on you. So this is the situation that they indoctrinated to. It's two-faced on every level. They say the honors program surrounds protection of virgins. But if you protect virgins, there's something wrong with you. See how weird? How do you explain that? The honor code protects virgins, but if you protect virgins, there's something wrong with you. That's the underlying thesis that they use as a decoy through the whole thing. They raped a girl with Down syndrome who's deaf. Now, in their fabulation, she was probably like a follower of the nationalists of the Ukraine, or maybe she was a communist, a gook or something. But they made themselves believe in hysterical logic of reasoning that doing this was moral, and to punish somebody who was protecting virginity. It was moral to rape a deaf girl with Down syndrome. And Gallaudet ignored this too. Now, Gallaudet believes that, says, the deaf people, some of the people from the deaf community come and speak up. It's not fair to us who have weakened respiratory systems. And mine has been weakened by some kind of experiment recently. which, I don't know, maybe somebody who was in the UW dialectical said black people in Africa have trouble breathing, so make him have trouble breathing. Because this is the psychotic web at work in obsessive reasoning. Poison him in the mouth so that he feels blessed when COVID doesn't get him or something. Well, the point is that the people say it's not fair to us with weakened physical health disabilities that people don't wear masks. It's frightening. It makes us stay inside more than is healthy for us. Well, all I'm saying is, well, that's true. I wish you would have thought of that before. If you allowed these people to have a dominance from the macabre way they make a mockery, it's a theme, a huge theme. You're not disabled. You're scared to breathe the air. No, is that fair? That's not fair. That's not true, right? Am I deaf? Oh, no, no, no. I'm ignoring people. Is that fair? Is that fair? It's not fair. You see, there's a punishable offense in the way that they dealt with me that serves as a license that they can use when nobody tries to deal with it, no one tries to sanction it, no one tries to question it. Now, they always said, oh, it was just you. Well, that's what I believed when I was a child. That's why I didn't go into defensive mode. I thought it was just me. And so they're saying, and when I found out it wasn't just me, I started trying to warn people, and they're shh, shh. Now they're saying it's just you, when it's now affected even them. So they don't want to be identified with somebody who sees the problem. You see, they don't want to be identified. Seeing the problem is the problem, not the problem. The problem is the problem. The problem isn't the problem. Seeing the problem is the problem. The honor code is defense of virginity, but if you defend virginity, there's something wrong with you. So, and this is the way it all comes up in the refusal to accept the reality, which is that they're harboring administratively the criminally insane. They refuse to address the awareness of what is real in this matter, and it's getting to be a very serious problem of congressional oversight, of academic um, integrity, of protection of the disabled. Look what happened to our seniors. And, there's certain things that go on in our society that have led to the jungles being like steam valves, one of the premeditators called it. In Flame Over Africa, which is a hideous song by somebody who held me hostage as a child. Paul McCartney and his Senegalese friends are gunning, torrentially gunning for decades that these people are not what I say they are. They're free men who are in the arts who are being rumored about. Remember, John Schulman was arrested on an $8 million museum heist long after I was run out of town for gossiping about him. You see, so I mean, Gallaudet should have stood up to, to Miles Kirshner about what he was doing to me on principle, as not just a deaf person, but a traumatized deaf person with a neurological implant. Instead, they said, we'll allow you to make tests for the hearing to test the deaf. And they said, well, we don't care if it's not fair because we don't want to be identified with somebody who's questioning these things. Proctor goes into the stuff about unethical testing, but there is um, processes that allow unethical testing to be evaluated. When the Ukraine pulled it, when Russia pulled its stunt in the Ukraine, a number of people from Kenya, all over Africa, spoke out against and said this is recolonializing. We've learned that colonial society, with its obsession and greed, has overlooked certain basic values that make life worth living. And that's what we're concentrating on. Reparations for us means building back better, stabilizing the environment, and keeping a higher quality of life based on breathable air, drinkable water, freedom from disease, and promoting pests through strange flooding and typhoons and so forth. Okay, so these people have their priorities straight, but the UW elector who sends in the queers with the Rottweilers and says, It's dialectical. You are deaf because you were ignoring us. So you give us this day our licky chops, or you're going to see some Taliban explosions. And this is the mentality that holds dominion in Pittsburgh and Seattle and D.C. evidently. They are in control. And Gallaudet is so afraid of them that when one of these poachers says, "You aren't deaf, you're ignoring me," they say, "Well, we'll turn away and not pretend we didn't hear that. We'll turn away and pretend." Who's ignoring it? Who's ignoring it?